The Invisible Shed Farm. 8 stacked systems generating $5,000 a month behind your fence, no permits required. Your property is zoned residential. You probably checked that box when you bought it, and now you think that means you're locked out. You're not. The real money in backyard farming doesn't come from fighting zoning laws or hiding from inspectors. It comes from understanding what your city council actually wrote in that code, word for word, and building inside the gaps they didn't see coming. That's where this starts. Not with rebellion, with precision. By the end of this conversation, you're going to understand why a single suburban backyard can legally house 8 separate income-generating systems that most municipalities never anticipated when they drafted their ordinances in 1987. And once you see the pattern, you won't unsee it. Subscribe and hit the bell. This channel publishes one complete backyard income system every week. And if you miss even one, you miss the mechanics that make the whole thing work together. I want to hear from you too. In the comments, tell me which system in this list surprises you the most. I genuinely read those. Wait, this part is important, and I need you to focus for a moment. The complete mechanics behind why these systems stack, how the legal loopholes actually function, and the full financial breakdown by month for someone building this from zero, that's all spelled out in our detailed guide, available in the description and pinned at the top of the comments. It's where we show you the exact language in municipal codes across 12 states, and how to check your own. This isn't theoretical, it's the reference material that changes how you read your local ordinances. Here's what nobody tells you about invisible income. The families I've tracked who pull 5, 6, sometimes 7,000 a month from less than 800 square feet don't start by asking what's legal, they start by asking what's not classified. That's a different question entirely. Zoning ordinances are written by committees in 1987, revised twice in 2003, and then they sit. They regulate chickens, they regulate goats, they might even regulate rabbits, but most of them have absolutely no category for what you're about to hear. The first system that fits behind a suburban fence generates between $300 and $600 monthly. It's invisible, completely odorless, takes 20 minutes a day. Your city council probably thinks you're talking about something else entirely if you ever had to describe it. But that's System 1. System 2 compounds off System 1's waste. System 3 uses the output from both. By System 8, your input costs are falling while your revenue streams are climbing. That's not luck. That's stacking. The foundation is insects, specifically the larvae of the darkling beetle. They live in stacked plastic bins that fit in a corner, a garage, or under a bench. 40 states have 0 restrictions on breeding them. The other 10 have restrictions on selling them for human consumption, which isn't what you're doing. You're selling them as feed, fishing bait, and to reptile keepers. The insect protein market grew 40% year over year from 2023 to 2025. It's still accelerating. But here's the part that separates the operators making $500 a month from those making $2,000. The insect itself is one income stream. The frass, the excrement, the bedding waste, the byproduct that nobody's thinking about, that's a second stream. Organic gardeners pay $2 to $4 per pound for it because it's balanced, slow release, and packed with nutrients that expensive amendments try to replicate. Most home growers scoop it out and throw it away. You're looking at a third income stream from the exact same operation. Same space, same daily time investment, 0 additional equipment. And then there's the shed itself. Once you've built the infrastructure, once the bins are stacked and the temperature is controlled, you've created a microclimate. That microclimate becomes real estate. You can rent it, not rent it to people, rent the conditions themselves. To the system that comes next. System 2 arrives before System 1 is even mature. Crickets. Specifically the kind that don't chirp. Black crickets. The Acheta domesticus variety. They're quieter than mealworms, equally invisible, and they occupy the exact microclimate your shed now provides. Income range, $4 to $7.50 per month. Startup cost, $1.20. Daily time commitment, 15 minutes. Crickets eat the same substrate as mealworms. They also generate frass, but their real value is different. Reptile breeders, tarantula keepers, insectivore feeders, these people need crickets by the thousand. They need them delivered alive, on schedule, consistent size. Most regional suppliers can't scale. You can. Here's where the economics tilt. One cricket colony produces roughly 40,000 insects per 12-week cycle. Wholesale price to local breeders runs $0.08 to $0.12 per cricket. That's $3.200 to $4.800 per cycle from a single colony. You run 2 colonies on a staggered schedule. That's income every 6 weeks, not quarterly. But wait. Before we move to System 3, I need you to focus on something critical. Most people see mealworms and crickets and think they're just adding more work. They're not. They're adding automation to your income structure. As your first 2 systems mature, the daily maintenance actually decreases because the colonies self-regulate. You're not growing them harder, you're just harvesting more often. This is precisely where the complete guide on backyard stacking systems becomes essential. The ebook walks you through the exact colony schedules, the feeding cycles, the harvest timing, that allows each system to run on autopilot while you sleep. It's the difference between a $5.00 a month operation and a $2.00 a month operation. The link is in the description and pinned to the top comment. It's not free, but it will save you months of trial and error. System 3 is where the spatial efficiency starts to get aggressive. Ornamental shrimp, the freshwater varieties, Caridina and Neocaridina species. These live in glass tanks, small glass tanks, aquariums that measure 10 gallons, sometimes smaller. Income range, $6 to $1 to $100 per month. Startup cost, $2 to $3. Daily time, 10 minutes. Specialty aquarium enthusiasts pay $8 to $2.05 per shrimp, depending on color morph and rarity. A single 10-gallon tank houses 30 to 40 adult shrimp. A mature breeding colony produces 50 to 80 juveniles per month. You run 4 tanks. That's roughly 200 to 250 new shrimp entering the market every 30 days. The math is simple. 4 tanks, 40 shrimp per tank. 60% breed successfully. That's roughly 48 juveniles per tank per month. Sell them at an average of $1.2 each. You're looking at $2, 300 monthly, from 4 small aquariums that occupy less floor space than a filing cabinet. These systems don't just coexist. The cricket waste becomes supplemental food for the shrimp. The shrimp water, rich in nitrogen, becomes fertilizer for any above-ground garden you're running. Every output feeds the next input. That's the architecture. That's why the early systems feel simple, but the combined systems feel effortless. System 4 introduces your first real plant-based income. Microgreens. Not vegetables. Not herbs for long-term harvest. Microgreens. Seedlings harvested at 7 to 14 days of growth. Sold fresh to restaurants, farmers markets, and direct consumers who understand their nutritional density and flavor intensity. Income range, $1.200 to $2 per month. Startup cost, $4. Daily time, 20 minutes. A single standard microgreens tray produces 8 to 12 ounces of finished product. That product sells for $1.08 to $2.08 per pound wholesale to restaurants. You run 20 trays on rotation. That's 2.5 trays harvesting every single day. Consistent volume, consistent income, completely predictable. The math is straightforward. 20 trays rotating means you harvest 2.5 trays daily. At 10 ounces per tray average and $2.02 per pound wholesale, you're looking at roughly $3.400 monthly revenue. Subtract your seed costs, nutrients, electricity, and packaging. Your net is somewhere between $1, $200 and $2 depending on which restaurants or markets you supply. The setup fits in a corner of your garage. A simple shelving unit, some LED strips, a tray watering system, nothing that needs ventilation or draws attention. Nothing that violates any code because you're growing plants, not animals. Here is where most backyard growers make their first real mistake. They think volume solves everything. They double their trays, then triple them, and suddenly they're spending 4 hours daily on a side hustle. The profitable operators do the opposite. They stay at 20 trays and increase their price. They find fine dining establishments willing to pay $2.08 to $3.05 per pound for premium varieties like pea shoots, radish sprouts, and sunflower greens. They negotiate year-round contracts instead of selling to farmers markets week to week. One grower in Colorado supplies the same 3 restaurants every single week. She's never advertised. She's never hustled. Those restaurants call her when they're running low. She charges them $3.00 per pound, delivers every Tuesday, and clears just under $1, $800 monthly in pure profit. System 5 is where things start to feel less like gardening and more like actual farming. Specialty herbs. Not the basil you already know about, the expensive ones. lemon verbena, shiso leaf, micro shiso, sawtooth coriander, Egyptian walking onions, purple Thai basil. These herbs sell for $8 to $1.05 per ounce dried, or $1.02 to $2.0 per bunch fresh, depending on your market and the season. Income range, $8 to $1 per month. Startup cost, $2.50. Daily time, 15 minutes. The advantage is that specialty herbs don't need trays or grow lights or complex systems. They grow in regular pots outdoors, in a greenhouse, or even on a patio. A single mature plant of shiso produces 2 to 3 pounds of harvestable leaf per growing season. That's roughly $1 to $1.50 per plant per year in dried product alone. You run 15 to 20 plants of mixed varieties. The harvest, drying, and packaging takes 15 minutes a day during peak season. Before we continue, I need you to focus on something specific. The systems we've covered so far, worms, crickets, shrimp, microgreens, herbs, they don't just sit next to each other. The cricket frass feeds the herbs. The spent microgreens substrate feeds the worms. The shrimp water becomes your liquid nutrient for everything else. By System 8, you're not paying for inputs anymore. You're recycling them. That is the architecture that separates a real operation from a hobby. And if you want the complete breakdown of how to set up these connections so that waste from one system literally becomes fuel for the next, that guide is in the description and pinned. It covers the feeding schedules, the moisture levels, the species combinations that actually work together, not just in theory, but in real backyards. This is the resource that shows you the mechanisms that make this whole thing run as one organism instead of 8 separate hobbies. The sales channels for specialty herbs are different than microgreens. Farmers markets, yes, but also high-end grocers, farm-to-table restaurants, specialty spice shops, and online direct-to-consumer sales through platforms like Etsy. A single listing for dried shiso leaf or lemon verbena can generate $3,000 to $5 monthly in passive orders without you managing inventory actively. One operator in North Carolina sells her dried specialty herbs through her own website and handles 3 to 4 orders per day. She packages them in small glass jars with custom labels and charges $1.04 to $1.08 per jar. Her monthly revenue sits around $1.200. Her time investment is roughly 3 hours per week during the growing season, maybe 1 hour per week during winter, because the plants slow down. System 6 introduces your first aquatic income stream, ornamental shrimp, specifically red cherry shrimp and amano shrimp. These live in planted aquariums. They breed continuously. The juveniles sell for $2 to $4 each to aquarium hobbyists. An established colony of 100 shrimp produces 40 to 60 juveniles monthly once they stabilize. Income range, $4 to $8 per month. Startup cost, $3. Daily time, 10 minutes. A 20-gallon-long aquarium generates enough volume. The shrimp eat the algae that grows naturally. They produce nutrient-rich water, that shrimp water we mentioned earlier, which you harvest and use on your herbs and microgreens. The setup costs roughly $3,000 for the tank, substrate, plants, and heater. Monthly maintenance is electricity and occasional food supplements. Your only real input is time, and that's minimal. 10 minutes daily for water checks and feeding. The income is passive. Post your juveniles on local Facebook groups or Craigslist. People buy them constantly. One breeder in Portland runs 5 separate 20-gallon tanks in her basement. She breeds red cherry, amano, and caridina shrimp in different tanks to keep genetics clean. She sells roughly 250 shrimp monthly and nets between $6 and $8 after all costs. She has never advertised. People find her through local aquarium groups and keep coming back. System 7 shifts focus entirely. Your first real plant-based cash crop, lavender. Dried lavender bundles sell for $1.02 to $1.08 each at farmers markets. Lavender essential oil and dried buds for culinary use command premium prices online. A single mature plant produces 1.00 to 1.500 stems annually. Income range, $1.50 square feet to $2.57 per month. Startup cost, $2.00. Daily time, 5 minutes maintenance, 4 to 6 hours harvest period, twice yearly. 30 plants occupy roughly 60 square feet. They require minimal water once established. They need no pesticides. They thrive in poor soil. Your only real work happens during harvest, 2 to 3 weeks in early summer, and again in late summer if you're cutting for dried bundles. That's where the 4 to 6 hours comes in. Bundle, dry, package, sell. A grower in California sells her dried lavender through farmers markets, her own Etsy shop, and to local spas and boutiques. She runs 40 plants. Her revenue last year was $2.400 monthly during peak season, dropping to $4 to $6 during winter when she's selling pre-dried inventory. Her annual net profit sits around $1.800 to $2.000 from those 40 plants and roughly 240 square feet of space. Here is the revelation I promised you at the beginning of this video. The invisible shed farm is not invisible because of what it hides. It's invisible because of what it doesn't trigger. Every single system we walk through operates inside a blind spot in municipal code. Not because the systems are illegal, but because the code was written before anyone imagined you'd run them in your backyard. The authors of those ordinances thought in categories: livestock, poultry, commercial agriculture. They didn't think in terms of snails in a bin, or soldier fly larvae, or ornamental mushrooms fruiting in a climate-controlled box. That gap between what the law forbids and what it never imagined you'd do, that gap is where $5,000 a month lives. The second revelation is this: stacking systems is not just about saving space, it's about creating velocity. When your mealworm frass becomes your mushroom substrate, and your mushroom waste becomes your snail bedding, and your snail waste becomes your garden input, you stop losing money at every transition. You start capturing it. A solo mealworm operation might net you $3.00 a month. Stacked with 3 other systems, it becomes a $1.50 monthly cost reduction for the entire operation. That's the difference between a curiosity and a business. Third, the income doesn't come from a single breakout star. The $5 a month isn't generated by one system that's phenomenal and 7 that are okay. It comes from 8 systems that each hit their floor. Mealworms at $4.00, soldier flies at $5, snails at $6, mushrooms at $1.20, microgreens at $8, herb propagation at $6, lavender at $5.00, propagated perennials at $4. That's $5.00 before accounting for any seasonal spike. And frankly, this is the part that still bothers me when I think about why more people don't pursue this. The math is almost too simple. You're not gambling on one crop. You're running 8 smaller income streams that together absorb risk. If mushroom prices dip 1 month, snail demand compensates. If weather damages half your lavender bloom, your herb propagation is unaffected. Diversification stops being a finance term and becomes a survival mechanism. The fourth piece is the one nobody calculates correctly: the compounding effect of volume and reputation. Your first month, you sell to friends and local Facebook groups. By month 3, you're at the farmer's market. By month 6, restaurants know your name. By month 12, you have a waiting list for microgreens and a standing order with 3 boutique hotels for fresh herbs. That's not luck. That's the natural outcome of consistent supply meeting proven demand. You're not trying to create a market. You're filling a void that already exists. And finally, the detail that makes this actually work. You don't need permits, because you're not creating a regulatory problem. You're solving one. The city wants fewer people importing food and animals from industrial sources. Every local snail you produce is one less snail farmer operating in Mexico. Every microgreen tray you grow replaces shipped product from California. Every herb bundle reduces packaging waste. You're not breaking rules. You're operating in the spaces the rules didn't anticipate, the spaces that serve the community better anyway. So here's what you do next. Pick one system. Not all 8. 1. Mealworms, soldier flies, or snails if you want the shortest learning curve and the lowest startup cost. Mushrooms or microgreens if you want faster revenue with slightly more attention. Lavender or herbs if you prefer something you can touch and see grow. Spend 30 days learning that system properly. Document your costs to the penny. Track your hours. Record what actually sells and what doesn't. After 30 days, you'll have real data, not projections. And with that data, you'll be ready to add the second system, the one that feeds off the first. The guide I mentioned earlier, the one in the description and pinned comment, that's where the actual mechanical details live. The exact substrate recipes for each system, the seasonal pricing patterns for every crop, the vendor names for every input, the spreadsheets to track your costs. Without that information, you're guessing. With it, you're operating. The difference between guessing and operating is the difference between hoping this works and knowing it will. Thank you for watching all the way through. This channel releases a complete backyard income system every single week, the kind of detailed, real number breakdowns that take months to assemble. If you found this valuable, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss one. And if you've already got a system running behind your fence, I'd genuinely like to hear about it in the comments. That's how we build this community, by sharing what actually works. I'll catch you in the next one.